Meeting will come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Any opposed? Motion carries. This time I'll entertain public comments on agenda items only. Anyone in the audience? No? Anyone online? No. So at this point, I will turn this over to Dr. Fox for discussion to continue to review the proposed budget for the 2025-2026 school year by function and object expense codes.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Jones. We're going to go ahead and pick up kind of where we left off from the last meeting. And where we're going to leave off is at 2620, which is always a good spot, which is buildings and grounds. So we're just going to pause for a moment as everybody kind of opens that up, and then we're going to open it up here on the screen, and we'll get a chance to look through the beginnings of buildings and grounds. And when we say buildings and grounds, we're encompassing the internal and the external and all of the property and the property maintenance that includes our school district. So we are currently looking at lines and line numbers. 1 at the top here, it's the header, all the way through line number 35.
I have a couple that I put on the
Yep.
questions. I just don't know what, I don't have the lines correlated with them, so
Oh, no
I'll just
worries.
run down them.
No worries.
So the first one I had down was the $7,500 for bleacher inspection.
Yes.
I asked you that if we end up going ahead with the bleachers, purchasing them, would that get absorbed in the purchase of that? Like, would they have to inspect them before anyway, or
Yeah, the first year would be an inspection based on the cost of that. You pull out the old bank, put the new bank of bleachers in, and it gets inspected inside of the cost of it. And then moving forward yearly, there would still be a cost. Am I correct in saying that, Mr. Howe?
Actually, the only thing that would be, if we did one with the new bleachers, there would be a $1,500 check on the backboard. This inspection's backboard, that bleachers.
Oh, okay.
The backboards?
Yeah,
Inspection of
the basketball backboards for the mechanical
I see.
components.
It's
and-
over $1,500 or something like that for the.
So I understand that moving forward, you will always have this in as a line item. That's what I'm hearing. But in this particular year, will that $7,500 get absorbed into purchasing the new?
We purchase new bleachers, we won't need to.
Okay, yeah, I'm just, it's not much, but every little bit helps on at
Absolutely.
least for this given year. Okay.
So as Mr. Howe said, it will be a $6,000 reduction because $1,500 is still needed for the inspection of backboards or the system, the hoist system to pull the backboards up and down.
My next one was on the
Can
cleaning.
we back up 1 minute?
Oh, yeah,
Leanne?
sorry.
I think it does beg the question, though. I was wondering if we approve the Peony projects, have we had a chance to go through the budget and think, we were going to spend this on doing this for the roofs, but if we do Panoni, they're going to do this for the roofs, just like this couple $1,000s here. Have we had a chance to go back and say, hey, if we approve all these Panoni projects, then this amount of money can come out of our budget because this is stuff that we won't need any longer?
So really great question. The first part, any roof replacement or treatment is not in this current budget right now. In terms of like HVAC repairs and maintenance,
Yeah.
we may see over time a reduction of that, but we still have 2 other buildings that we'll need with pumps and just the replacements of certain pieces of piping. So those numbers will stay true, but we're probably looking at, depending on when we would sign into contract and be able to get a system in place, it may take close to a year before it could be done anyway, and you would still have to run the current system and still want to maintain the current system to the best that we can. Just if they said, hey, within 2 years you want to replace A, B, and C, we wouldn't do those things. But we need to keep the system operational. But it's still a very good question. And then we would, the goal would be to see of some type of way, some type of quantified data of energy savings. But that would be measured differently.
Thank you.
Yep.
So that dovetails actually on, I'll skip the next one, but I'll go to those. So I had down about the HVAC maintenance agreement, looks like it's more than doubled, and I was wondering why, and then again also, if that's gonna be adjusted with, if we do put in the new HVAC. And then the HVAC repairs is a pretty large number as well. Is that because we've got a faulty system in the middle school, and will that be not that big if we replace that?
Okay, so you're talking about the 150,000, that was 65 last year?
Yeah, that's the first part, yeah.
So, manpower right now, I'm down 2 mechanics. We looked at everything. We took my budget is for 6 maintenance staff. We took off one of the maintenance staff. So we're gonna do 5 maintenance staff. The $65,000 contracts we have with HP McClure will disappear. This will be tied into this. What it does is, I have quotes out from 3 different companies to have a certified maintenance guy here 3 days a week to help us with our repairs, with HVAC stuff, plumbing, small electrical. The guy's not a certified electrician, but he can get by. I think what this is gonna do is, the first year or 2 is going to get our stuff back up to where it needs to be. The PM program, that will be taken over with this. He's gonna do we do the PM program now inside the building, but it's not a
What is
full
that?
PM.
What is that?
Preventive maintenance.
Okay,
So we have a contract with HP McClure for the controls. That 65,000 includes a chiller, testing every year or every quarter, all the filters on the roof, on all rooftop units, belts, and all preventive maintenance on the rooftop units. It's nothing to do with the inside units. So the inside units are getting older, and I'm hoping that we can get more PMs on them. If we get this gentleman in here for 3 days a week at 24 hours a week, and he is highly certified, it's gonna cut down on our emergency calls also. So the one number down here, the HVAC repairs, we added $25,000 of that, but we took 25 out of the general supply, because anything we purchase for HVAC, when that gentleman's here, he's gonna repair it without charging us extra. There is still gonna be stuff that is gonna be needed charge, that's why it's still 175. I don't have the actuals right now of what we spent this year with emergency calls.
why, like what, I guess my thinking is that the reason we had all those repairs was because we were having problems, particularly in the middle school, which is why we were looking to replace it. Why is it so high? Like, what's breaking on them? Like, I don't know, maybe that's a broad question.
Right now, we're waiting for some TX valves for some HVAC units in the elementary school. The units are 15, 18 years old. The life expectancy is between 15 and 20. So we are at our life expectancy of the units that are in the rooftop, in the roofs, inside the units. It's getting old.
So are we looking to replace those too? Like, if everything's old, I thought we were looking only at replacing middle school.
Due to the amount of availability of capital we have right now, and just other projects, yes, we're looking at middle school first.
Okay.
We'd have to get that project, and then look at the other, the next future projects would include replacing some of those
So
items. And
I think the middle school needs done first, just because of the units we have down there. They're totally different than the ones in the high school and the elementary school. The ones in the elementary and high school have parts on that can be still replaced. The TX valves, the compressors, we can still get stuff for them. The ones in the middle school are getting a little bit older, and it's a totally different system. So the 175 stayed there because whatever parts we buy for this gentleman, the contracted person to come in, is going to come out of that budget. It's not going to come out of the general funding.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a general idea of the life expectancy of these things? Because my thinking on it is, if they're going to start nickel and diming us, and I know we borrowed X amount of money to do certain projects, if we have I mean, if they're gonna need to be replaced in 3 years, we're not gonna miraculously have the money to do it then either. So, I mean,
So,
so maybe we need to be looking
main-
at doing more.
yeah, the main components are the compressors, the fans, and the valves, the TX valves. Once they're replaced, the only thing really could go wrong with them is the plumbing stuff in it, but that will last a lot longer, I believe, than the mechanism, the stuff that runs them. So I think just replacing them here and there. I think this year we did 2 TX valves and 1 compressor, I believe. So, I mean, it's not hammering us like heavy.
Does anyone remember when we borrowed the $12 million? What was, for how many years did we borrow that at a certain?
Yeah, I believe the debt run is 10 years.
I don't remember.
I mean,
thought was-
it
yeah, was
makes
7
sense.
to 7, I was thinking, but something like that, 7 to 10 or whatever.
Well, that's it makes sense to me if we're gonna have something major that needs to be done. If it needs to be done before that, in the next 10 years, then maybe we need to relook at that and borrow an additional amount for a longer period of time, or I still feel we should spend down some of our reserves, frankly. But I think if we've borrowed this money and we're looking at these improvements, I think we need to be looking at what do we need to do? What's gonna last for 10 more years? Am I wrong in thinking that way?
No, and I think Mr. Howell did a great job of explaining. I think there are certain parts that are just going to go, like valves are going to go bad. You're going to see different pieces of pipe that are going to fail or corrode, that are going to need to be replaced. Belts are going to go. Certain pumps have a life expectancy because they run consistently and constantly. And I don't
It is a
think,
concern, though, for looking at an $85,000 increase in maintenance.
Sure, and I think
because
that's-
things are getting older.
well, things
So,
are getting
I mean,
older and the price of everything is going up as well, too. You know, you get a valve and, you know, you get one of those thermostatic valves and the mixing, those, just the prices of those items are going up. And then the prices to be able to first thing we look at is, do we have it in stock already? B, can we get it? And when we can get it, and then are we able to install it ourselves, or do we have to get somebody certified to be able to do it? And it depends on the complexity of that repair, where it is. Sometimes it's embedded within the ceiling or the wall. Those types of things all add up in terms of price and repair. So the part itself may only be $500, but the total scope of the repair may be $2,500 because of the complexities of the time and effort associated with that repair. Is that accurate?
Yes, very accurate. The unit down in the elementary school right now that needs a TX valve, the valve itself is $750. It's $3,300 to repair it. It's got to come out of the ceiling. It's got to be lowered out of the ceiling to do it.
How many hours did you say?
It'll be like $3,300 to do it with a $700 part.
And Mr. Howell, if I understood you correctly, you reduced the number of full-time staff by 1, which is a decrease of about $50,000 in your staffing. And what you increased in the maintenance agreement was this 3-time-a-week certified technician who's going to be able to help, which is why there's the increase of the $85,000. So really, it's a $35,000 overall increase because you're looking at having some additional certified staff to help with some of the preventative maintenance, correct?
Yes. So the $65,000 contract we had last year with HP McClure will be gone. That'll be included in this.
Okay.
So you're looking at 50 and the 65,000. That was from last year.
Okay.
And even if we move forward with a long-term HVAC replacement plan at the middle school, we're still going to need to have different parts and repairs still in the budget for the other 2 buildings. And there still might be some components, some other components within the HVAC system. Obviously, it'll be under warranty that will still have the ability to repair, but there will still be other parts and components that get tied into it as well. Having this person hopefully frees up our current staff to be able to do, and not just spend time on changing a ton of filters, because there's a lot of filters, both internal and external, that take a lot of time to change on a regular basis. How many filters on average would you say within the district, just ballpark? You figure you have 1 per room, right?
Yeah, I just had the numbers. Probably the one size, the main one for elementary and middle school is all but 200 filters. That's just that's the main.
And again, some of those are easier to get to, and some of those are up within the roof that you have to move different things and components. And you,
Most of them are hard to get to, being up in the ceiling.
I had one more, I think.
Yeah.
If that's okay?
Absolutely.
So the cleaning service is outsourced. That has a minimal increase to it. I guess maybe for the benefit of myself and maybe the public, is an understanding of why we spend $250,000 on that. I know, way back in COVID, we actually had to do that a lot more because of those things, but, why do we spend that kind of money on outsourcing?
yeah, first, we don't want to. Outsourcing is something we definitely don't want to do. We'd rather hire and maintain and retain our own custodial staff. But we're short staff, and then when we're short staff, we backfill with our third-party contractor, and they help provide the staffing for those particular areas here at the high school, elementary, and middle. And we have those contracted staff at all 3 buildings.
What should our staff be in those buildings, like that we're short-staffed on? I know we have budgeted for 9, it says 7 and 2 vacant, but where are they back, like how many positions are they backfilling?
They are backfilling 6.
6 positions?
Yes, 2 in each building.
And we are constantly looking to get, so if anybody's listening, we would want to hire. And then what we would do is reduce, because we're not locked into a set amount with our third-party provider, which is really nice. That number would decrease, but our staffing number would increase.
I think that's kind of an important thing to maybe regularly revisit in terms of just from the public's perspective and ours as a board. Because you're right. I mean, we can't do something with the people that we don't apply for the jobs. I was actually looking back a couple of years ago at the athletic budget, realizing that our trainer's contract a couple of years ago was $45,000 a year. And then because of a shortage of trainers, we had to go out and get a contracted trainer to almost $75,000 or $80,000 a year. And then it made sense at that point to hire somebody to put them in at $80,000 a year. It doesn't change the fact that our costs for a trainer doubled, right? And so I don't know if there's just no people out there to fill these jobs, or is it a function of what we're offering for those jobs? I don't know. I don't know what the salary benefits or whatever would be for an individual custodian times 6. Is it more than that $255,000? Maybe it is. Maybe it's cheaper to contract. I don't know. I guess that's what I was kind of just wondering.
No, I think that's always good to revisit it. We certainly will revisit. We watch very closely these contracts. We watch very closely the hours, making sure that we're not overstressing some of our own employees to fill or require them to do more than really what they should be, because that quality also begins to dwindle a little bit. But that's a good idea to constantly for us to revisit, to look at. We do the best we can in terms of a cost analysis and looking, but there's a lot of variables with that, as we all know, depending on what type of experience they have coming in and those types of things as well.
So, Scott, this budget, and I apologize, I probably should know this. Does this budget have in it your full staff, even though we know we're going to be short, plus these additional people? Or does it just have the people we have on board now, plus these additional people?
I'm not.
Am I making sense?
Yeah, no, you're making total sense. I think this is the staff that we need.
It's our current staff only.
This is the current.
No, I think it includes
This
the
is 9
vacants.
that we need, right? Correct.
So
This
that,
is the 9 that we need.
so the budget is for the 9 that we need.
Yeah.
So we're budgeting for that, assuming we could hire 9 people. But, and if we could hire those 9 people, then we would not need to budget $225,000.
No, we need 6 more than that. Is that what you're saying?
6.
We need 9 plus 6.
Yes, so what you'll see is like the the substitutes, I use a lot more substitutes now. So this number is probably gonna be higher because I'm using substitutes in place of the full-timers. So, I mean, if I bring 2 substitutes in at a lower rate than a full-timer, it should equal out about the same amount. But we're still down 6 people. Throughout the year, we were working with like 4 or 5 outsourced ones. Just the last month and a half, we went to the 6, just because we lost some staff.
Thanks. I'm assuming maybe periodically we spend the money to throw out more advertisements for additional folks every so often, hoping that maybe we can get some.
So just again, maybe to make sure I'm clear, because I thought I was clear on it. So we have 9 budgeted in our line item for maintenance staff, or for custodial staff, and you need a total of 15 staff? Is that what I'm hearing? So we budget for 7, there's 2 vacant, but we still bring in 6 from the outsource.
That's including the part-time staff also, 4 on top of that.
So you're using part-time staff, really almost as full-time staff currently right now to
That's a different-
backfill certain areas.
Yeah, but that's a different line item. So I'm just looking at full-time custodial staff is 9, 7 plus 2 vacant. And I thought you mentioned that the contract brings in an additional 6. So we need 15 total?
Yes.
Okay,
We have 8 vacants, we have 8 vacant full-time positions.
With 6, yes, 8. With the ones on the, yeah,
okay.
6 nights. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I think that was all I had on operations, Buzz. I don't know if you need to scroll down further. I'm not sure where you were on. I think you said you were going to 35. Is that what you originally said?
Yeah, we can continue, thank you, to move down the lineup here.
And I skipped ahead. I apologize. I went ahead on the maintenance thing.
It's all right. Thank you.
Actually, as he's looking, I was just curious, why did the cost of rodent or pest control or whatever, I don't know what the line, why did that go up so much?
We're doing a monthly inspection now through the pesticide company for the 2 home ec rooms in the middle and elementary and for all 3 kitchens. That's why it went up.
We haven't had an outbreak of more pests.
Yeah, I think what happened last year is when the state inspector came in, they asked for the pesticide, the pest control stuff. So we just got a contract with a local guy. That he comes in every month, checks all the traps, resets everything.
All right, any questions on the items down through the bottom of diesel, gas, new equipment, and dues and fees? All right. We will pause as we pull up the next category, which is our athletic program. 3250. Oh, you're quick. We'll pull up 3250. Let's pull up questions or items 1 through line number 1 through 27, and that's the coaching and training salaries and benefits.
I guess my first question, round of questions that I had, unless, did I just jump in front of somebody? Sorry if I did. Just in general, the increase in the coaching salaries, I actually had written down a piece of paper and I left it at home, so I don't have that in front of me. But when I first looked at the budget, which was before you may have been finished with the athletics budget for both you and Jason, there were numbers in the 2026 which are different than what's in there now. They were 14,750 to like 17,500. Now these numbers are higher than that. So I guess my first question is, I'm not exactly sure why there's such big increases in the salaries. I don't know if there was, yeah, maybe that's my first question. And then I looked back even just to 2 years ago, and there's been a pretty large increase in certain sports. I know we had that adjustment with the matrix, the coaches matrix, and I know, Scott, you came in kind of in that transition, so I understand that challenge there. But I recall when Quiggs went over that with us, that there was going to be an increase, but not significant as he realigned that coaches matrix. And so, you know, some of these numbers are going up quite a bit. So I don't know if who has the answer to that one.
I got that. So yeah, originally whenever I sent this out, we had the 14,750 and stuff like that was in column in row E, or column E, 2025. So after conversations with you, you wanted to kind of see what it would look like by sport if you applied the current matrix to it. So I did that by sport, looked at the experience and quantity of coaches and stuff that they had, and then also Peasers is factored into here. I'm not 100% confident Peasers were in the number in 2025, so I made sure that Peasers were included in 2026.
But I don't, and maybe the rest of the board, for people that might pick your mind brain, I don't remember there being 28% increases in like track and field. Like, I don't remember that number. There's one head coach there and 4 assistants. Like this, it just was weird, like certain ones only went up a minimal amount. Baseball only went up a minimal amount.
Well,
I guess
it would be important to know if Peasers is involved and it wasn't, that might be the reason for that, right?
Yeah, but then Peasers should be across the board the same number. It should be a percentage the same. These increases aren't the same percentage across the board.
So I factored in the experience of coaches. So baseball has new coaches where it might have been factored in with Quiggs, you know, a more experienced coach. I don't know, but I took into account the years of experience of the coaches as well, whereas before it was just a flat number based on, I mean, because not all sports are 14,750. So I took into account the matrix, and, you know, different sports have different, you know, grades and stuff like that.
2 years ago, we were paying $12,000 in track and field coaches, and now we're at $22,000. I guess that's my concern. I don't,
Again,
you know.
I think that's a good question. And I think he took the real people he knows that are in the current positions currently, and that could change, and then applied them to the current matrix. And that matrix hasn't changed. So that presentation we had last year was not approved. That matrix is the matrix. And really the only position that increases at this current matrix, the current structure, is the head coaches, as well as applying that Peasers formula as well. So I think those whole numbers that you saw previously were numbers related to if all positions were filled, what that was on the entry level, or what we currently may have, and kind of not adjusted according to any of the other.
This is based on the old matrix. This isn't even based on the one that Quiggs had.
So we never approved
Right.
the one that Quiggs had. The one that he presented to us at that time, we didn't take any action on.
But it does, you said 2 years ago track and field was at 12 and now it's 24. So, and we know who those coaches are, and some of them are the same, and actually we lost some veteran coaches. So it should not have doubled in 2 years, I guess, even with Peasers. It's a question, it's not, it's just, Doesn't that raise a red flag if it doubled in 2 years? And we know
mean-
who the head coach is, and we know some of them are veteran coaches that aren't here any longer.
I would just almost love to have a tutorial on our coaches matrix. Because I feel like sometimes it feels like this sort of unknown out there, and maybe there needs to be, obviously we talked about there being a revamp, that's why we asked Quiggs to look at it last year. But I feel like it just feels like we approve for the coaches matrix, and I don't understand it. I don't understand how the numbers are
I would agree
But-
with you 100% that the matrix is extremely complicated. It's a lot like looking at PD's transportation formula and how that spreadsheet works. Absolutely, Mr. Markowitz is ready when the summer hits to begin I would say, a study on coaches' matrix and what that looks like in studying a new philosophy, looking at others, looking at current rates. But that's going to take a significant amount of time to study and a significant amount of time then midway through that study to share with you if we believe we're on the right track or not, and then the direction you want to go from that study. So it's a full year, at least, depending. But it's work that needs to be done and work we're going to do. It's not ready at this point. I believe the matrix was shared. We can make sure we'll reshare it with you again so you can kind of see that where that falls. If you want a tutorial, we certainly can do so and go over it.
I can take the time to look at it again myself, I guess. I guess my concern is a $36,000 increase in coaches' salaries in 1 year. Like, we don't normally raise our coaches' salaries that much money.
No, but I think if it's fair to say the numbers rolled from previous years may not have been the most accurate numbers based on the matrix, and I'll own that, and the piecers portion that wasn't included in this.
So are you saying we were already paying them these numbers and the budget didn't reflect that? Or
Yes, I believe that's it. I
we are
believe-
going to be paying them more because we weren't paying them what they were supposed to be getting paid? Which one is that? Which one is it?
It's not the latter. They were being applied appropriately to the matrix, but I believe that this spreadsheet and breakdown with the amount of data that you wanted per coach based on assumptions that were made at the time of this budget did not reflect the utmost real-time specific number. And again, there's a lot of assumptions in any budget. There's assumptions, as you're exactly right, that you stated, that person A is going to stay there for 5 years, or person A stood there or was in that position for as long as they can. But when a coach is ready to be added to the agenda, that name gets added to a spreadsheet. We take a look at the current matrix based on years' experience, how much they have. That gets applied, and that number gets added in there.
I guess my question is, and I know this is difficult because we have a new business manager who's doing a phenomenal job. Thank you, Jason, really. And we have a new athletic director, and I don't know that any of us are sure of exactly how our former athletic director did some of this, or whether he just went to the business manager and said, here are the salaries, put these in. Sounds like now our business manager's applying it. But if, and I go back to the track one just because it seems glaring to me, to go from 12,000 to 24,000 in 2 years. Something's wrong.
And
So I guess what I'm asking is, and I think our coaches deserve more money. I do, and I think we can look at ways to make that happen. But if we got to figure out how that goes from I'm just perseverating on that. If it goes from 12 to 24 in 2 years, we have to figure out why. Like somehow we need to dig down and find out exactly how and exactly why, and then apply whatever we find out across the board. So that we, you know what I mean? And I know that's frustrating, but I don't know how we not do that. I don't know how we say, well, maybe this. Don't we have to dig in, find out exactly how that happened?
And
We
let me
can't just
say this too, that
maybe.
was in a year where we had a very weird 2022 or 2023, 2024 budget that was difficult to even look at that particular year. So I am not as concerned if we were already paying it and the numbers weren't reflecting it than if we are now going to jump up, right, and pay more. If it's the latter, then yeah, that's a bookkeeping issue that could be, as you mentioned, just a function of the big changeovers that have happened over the last couple of years. If this is going to be more reflective of what we were already paying, then it's not that big of a jump. Is that, you know what I mean? Kind of correcting.
We were paying, it's almost like someone, God, I don't want to make extra work for people, but it's almost like someone needs to go back a year and apply the matrix
Well,
and find out what number comes up.
I
and
think that's
whether-
what Jason did,
Well, okay.
this,
and-
right? Yeah.
No, but I mean, go back the year before and see if the number comes up is the number that was in our budget or not. And if the number that comes up applying the matrix is not the number that was put in the budget, what were they paid? Were they paid according to the number that comes up according to the matrix 2 years ago? Or were they paid this amount? You know, I mean, I think it behooves us to know that and for our coaches to know that too. Am I making sense? Does
So
that
the
make
matrix
sense?
was applied appropriately every time a coach was recommended based on the information that we received and took in front of you to apply, and to the best of our ability, we applied that very large matrix and placed that numerical number onto the agenda for approval. I think the question that you're asking right now is why is there such a difference between 25 and 26? Because we continue to roll over round numbers, and we looked at the numbers holistically and grouping. Now we're getting into the individuals, much like we did with teachers, and looked specifically at years of service, experience, where they fall on the matrix, and then applied the piecers. And Jim, you've been waiting patiently. I'm sorry, I'll stop talking.
Oh, I just have two questions. For the track and field boys and girls, is there one main coach for each group?
No. Yeah.
No, we have one head coach for both.
For both?
Yeah.
Oh, I was hoping that figure represented in its entirety, so you would have actually two coaches, one for the girls and boys, which would fall into, if you split that in half, 11,000 each, which would be incommensurate with everybody else's.
No, a couple of years ago, there was a decision made to go from two head coaches to one and add an assistant coach. So it went from 2 head, 2 assistants, so boys and girls head and boys and girls assistant, to 1 head coach and 4 assistant coaches, kind of splitting up the amount of coaching dollars amongst that the same way. So it was net neutral, if I recall correctly, because we only had 1 head coach now, so they were able to take part of the head coach's salary of the other one and split it into 2 assistants. So they end up with 1 head, 4 assistants.
So you have one head coach for both boys and girls
Yes.
track? Okay. My second question is block number 5. Why is 2026 blank? And then compared to block 14?
It was duplicated.
Yeah,
It was
it was
duplicated.
duplicated last year, so I pulled it out.
What's that?
It was duplicated.
last
It's in
year,
there
so it was,
twice.
yeah, it was
Yes,
in
I was
line.
gonna say, are we double dipping the difference then, when you add up the totals?
Double dipping. I took it out of 2026, so we don't have the duplicate in
Actually, the
there.
difference is even more because
Yes.
that's not there.
Right.
Yeah.
The other reason why this matters is we didn't hire everyone according to the matrix. We did, but we decided last year that we would take a look at the head coach salary and let the head coach then divvy that up accordingly between himself and his assistants. So I don't know where that number comes from if we're not if we're not accurate as far as numbers of years and how long this person's been there. If that number comes out of this budget and this budget number was wrong, does that make sense?
No,
Like-
I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're asking.
Like
I'm
if,
sorry.
let's say football, the head coaching salary, let's say it's $4,000 for football. And if that's what we paid, that's what we paid. But if the head coach says, let me take that money and I don't need to be paid that much, let me have more assistants and I'll divvy up my salary, then we approve it that it's not hired per the matrix. We take the amount that was budgeted and we give it to the head coach and let him divide that up. But if the amount that's budgeted is not accurate, then we have to make sure that's the right number so that we have that. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't know where that number would come from.
So that number would come from the matrix. So if I'm a first-year head football coach and I wanted to do exactly what you said, is to waive the matrices and hire 5 coaches, I look at my 4 assistant coaches that are in the matrices of step 1 or whatever that is for assistant coaches. Here's my salary for assistant coaches. Here's what I make as a head coach year 1. Here's the total allotment of money. And here's what I propose, and I'm breaking that down.
So when you say, and again, I apologize for being maybe dense, but when you say the matrix, okay, I have this sheet and it's the matrix. And I have this sheet and it's our budget. I don't understand why those numbers don't match.
Well, and I think sometimes even the numbers here, you're going to see on the master overall budget, doesn't match technically what our overall summation of payment for administrators, staff, and our teachers, because there's a lot of variables that go into play. We're making assumptions right now based upon the current staffing or previous staffing. That could absolutely change. So we might not be able to fill a position. We might be able to fill a position, but that person we fill has a higher earning, based on.
But right now, they should match.
Yeah, but-
Exactly.
I will, in support of what Dr. Fox is saying, Mike, let me give.
What I'm saying is the 2025 numbers do not reflect PCERS, and I do not believe we took a holistic look, and that's on me, of who that coach was and where they fell on the matrix. What I'm saying now is in 2026, it includes that, and it includes that real person and where they fall on the matrix.
So, and let me just say this to also clarify what Dr. Fox is saying and what I think you're asking. For example, we just did this with baseball, right? So we waived the matrix so that they could hire assistant coaches, correct? So what they did was, and if I'm wrong on this, my understanding is, they took what they were going to pay the head coach, and they took what they would have paid the assistant, or whatever, say, or 2 assistants, whatever it was that we budgeted for, but took the real amount they would have paid that real person. Then they totaled that all up and let that head coach divvy up that amount. That amount actually came in less, we approved, less than what we actually budgeted last year. Like it came into like 11,800 instead of 12,000.
What I'm saying is, let's say football. I'm assuming what we're doing now is looking at last year's football staff and assuming they're all going to stay, looking at the matrix, they're here yet another year, this should be their salary next year on the matrix right now, football. That should exactly match right now what's in here under football. And then if any of them leave and we pay them less, then it would change. But right now, our football team, coaching staff should be based on everyone from last year's football coaching staff staying, which probably may not happen. That should match exactly what's in.
Plus Peasers, because they added Peasers in,
But
right?
you can add these, but that's where I'm saying, that number should
Yeah,
match.
I think it does now, right? Isn't that what you did? Yeah,
It does now.
yeah.
And it did not in the past for whatever reason, but the numbers we have now, we assume are accurate.
So the numbers are not
Unfortunately, our
reflecting,
previous people that were here aren't here to answer.
Well,
to why
that
it
previous
happened in
person,
the past.
the only constant is me, and I'll own that one. I didn't fully take a look at all of that and apply that. Again, there's a tremendous amount of detail associated with this budget, and we're really, at this point, the nexus between the 25, 26 is not 36,000, but really 32, because again, you're looking at the top 2 components and the categories. So if you take those categories, you'll go ahead and click on lines number 7 through line number 19, and that gives you the difference between the two.
I appreciate,
but-
I appreciate that, but you're doing an amazing job as a superintendent. There are things you have to do as a superintendent. I know the buck stops with you, buck stops with us, which is maybe why I keep going on about this, because the buck stops with all of us. If we don't know and understand our budget, we as a board just can't unilaterally like, that's fine, I don't understand those numbers, it's okay. So maybe that's why, I speak up as much as I do. But you're doing a very good job as our superintendent, and I appreciate you taking responsibility for that. But you gotta be able to trust the people, that you're working with to give you the right numbers. You can't be home all the time, double checking everyone else's work.
and I'm satisfied with your explanation of it, that this is not reflecting a $36,000 increase in coaches' salaries. This is reflecting an audit of what we were already paying, and that number reflected more clearly in this budget. That's they're different animals, and one may be problematic also, but at the end of the day, we're not spending $36,000 more on coaches than what we had in the previous. That's what I'm understanding? This is stuff we were already spending. Okay, all right.
Yeah, and just to add to that,
Awesome.
I'm not sure that, I know last year there was a lot more breakout and effort put into the spreadsheet itself. So again, it wasn't easy to just go through the entire matrix and come up with these numbers. So I don't know if they had this split out prior to last year and this is the best they could do. They maybe just had a total lump and said, hey, let's just split it into these different line items and didn't go specifically by sport. So we just continue to build and try to improve on, what we're providing.
So I think I did have, so thank you guys. Oh, do you have more? I'm sorry.
I actually have a question. So I'm not sure that I realized that we pay Peasers for the coaching matrix. So I don't think that was something that was really like last year when that was explained. I think it's helpful to know that Peasers is in that, but I think in all of the other salaries in the budget, it's salaries and benefits, and those are on two separate lines. So I think it is confusing when you're looking at this, that it is lumped together, and it can be misconceived and misconstrued that that is the lump sum that we're paying for salaries. The question that I have, though, is do we pay Peasers on every coach, even if they're not an employee of the district? So we would do that for everyone.
That's my understanding, is that correct?
So it might be clearer to the point of maybe Dr. Jones that it would be a one-to-one match of the matrix of what that progression is regardless, and then the Peasers is something addition if it's somebody that is being paid Peasers and kind of what that sum is to kind of really separate it.
We don't separate them out for teachers, though.
We haven't?
They're all listed together, salaries and benefits.
Then maybe in years past when I was looking at
Yeah, I
them.
think we
have
did, they
separated-
did.
We have
but they-
separated them
Yeah, they
out.
don't do it now.
But I think you make a good point where we can almost put, where it says salaries and benefits, it does. But we can, and it's salaries and benefits for athletic director, trainer, but down through number 19 is stipend, contract amount, and Peacer's contribution. Because unless you're a staff member that is authorized for benefits, there's no benefit at that point paid to them, except for the Peacer's benefit, which
And
some
I
would say that's
actually questioned that
optional.
too, Marcy. I was wondering why do we even pay Peasers to a part-time employee? I didn't know, but apparently it's
I
something
think to
they had to
somebody,
do.
why would we pay it to somebody who's not an employee of the district, but maybe they become, like if they have a full-time job somewhere else and they're just like
Yeah, like
in
Jason.
essence, a
like
contract employee.
Jason was
who's
that,
just-
yeah, before.
Why would we, like, why are we, listen, are we required, if they're under a certain number of hours or something like that, to pay into Peasers for them?
We are required. I think that's what I read.
Yeah, we actually had to research that one a little bit deeper too, because I will be fully transparent and know that that was a complete shock to myself as well. And I had to reach out, and Mr. Browse did the same, and the answer is yes. Yes, we do. There are different classifications, if I'm accurate in saying
Even when they're
that.
not an employee, which is kind of shocking, but, yes. All right, go ahead, I'm sorry, did you have anything else on that one? Do you have something you can ask on salaries?
So are we saying that we're going to separate this from here on out? Is that what we're going to try to do so that we can get a better, or no? I just want the understanding because, I mean,
You tell me, I can do whatever. I mean, it includes Peasers and other taxes that go along with payroll, but if
well,
it.
what does the
if it-
rest of the board think? I'm just curious because, I mean, we're trying. I just don't think there's a need every year to have to like look at this and like ask all these questions. If it helps to cut Peasers out so that we can see accurately,
But then would we do it with everything? You would?
get separated just from the standpoint you could look and be like, this is what our salaries are for our whatever sport. Because we can't
But we don't
can't
do it with
really.
teachers. We're not doing it with
It's
teachers.
kind of, I don't know, they're different entities.
Okay, all right, fair.
They really are, like,
What-
but I would like to have it separated out just so we had that general idea. But
Moving,
I'm only one person.
What if there was a separate, spreadsheet for coaches, so, and it was just like the coaches matrix and how I arrived at these numbers? And just have it like be a supplement file or
Yeah.
something like that?
That makes perfect sense.
well, moving forward into 26, 27, if we apply the same formula, wouldn't it catch up to itself and that you would have a more accurate comparison?
Yeah, for sure. And, if Peaser stayed absolutely the same, there would be no difference except for the change. But the only difference would be if Peaser's changed.
So this is basically a starting point to do that for this particular budget.
All right.
Real quick, going back, is it fair to say now that Mr. Markowitz has been here for a year, or will be, one of his to-do lists will be to go back to the matrix and come to us with a proposal idea for the matrix? Now that you've been here a while, right?
Well, yes, I think that's going to be a long-term project. It's not going to be anything in 2 months. He's going to come back.
But before
and
next year's budget, perhaps?
Perhaps. Again, I think this is something worth doing and studying, pulling different areas, pulling from local schools, figuring out what works for us, figuring out the simplicity of it so it's not so complex, talking, having some internal discussions about what works, what do we like, what do we don't like, coming up with a draft, sharing it, and then getting your feedback at a caucus to the next steps of moving forward with what that looks like. Now, I don't want to put a timeline on it because A, I don't want it to be rushed, and B, we want it to be right, and there's some other steps along the way we want to accomplish. But yes, maybe is the right answer, and it may be more applicable. But yes, that would be if we can, that would be the ultimate goal.
I mean, if we know what we have now is broken, which we do, I think having a year to try to put a draft together seems, what do you think, Mr. Markowitz? I apologize.
No, it's fine. A lot of schools are actually reaching out through the AD forum and asking for information about matrices because this is not just a us problem. It seems to be a problem across the board where people are trying to figure out what's going on, what's everybody else doing. So to pull information is going to be very easy to do. I think if we can compare to not only, the leagues we're in, surrounding schools, even schools that are a little further away that we play, we can get kind of information to see what they do. I think the matrix is something that we need to work on. I mean, myself, Dr. Fox, and Jason have met, and we've talked about it. It's one of those things that we want to, it needs to be more clear. So I think we need to pull information from other schools, see what they're doing. When you get all of that and you get different schools giving you some different information, it's a lot easier to pull that all together and say, all right, I think this is the best way for Susquenita to go. So I think, 2 months, 3 months, we could maybe have something going, but it does take time. It is something you really want. You don't want to rush. And I think a year to see what the budget was and what we're paying out, what we're doing, I think that's going to help. I think it's only going to get better from here, honestly, and more clear. So.
And when we say 2 months, I'd like you to take the spring season, live through the spring season, all of the changes to the spring season schedule that are going to happen, and take the summer as we plan and begin that formation of planning.
Or even fall season as well. However long. But I would hope before maybe next year when we do the budget.
Can I ask another question? So I'm off salaries now. So I just had a question as to if you know what is driving the increase, the 25% increase in team transportation.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. I mean, fuel is getting more expensive. Roar prices. I mean, everything's just getting more expensive. Roar prices are getting a little bit more expensive. I think if you combine all that, we also postseason. The travel was very, like, for field hockey and for other sports, wrestling and cheerleading that went on to states, that went on to districts. Those you factor in those as well.
But I
that-
would, okay. I just want to make sure that if it's being driven by the fact that we're looking at, junior high football or whatever, that's fine. I just want to be transparent about that, if that's part of the increase, because we had the same states travel last year for field hockey, and for the girls, cheerleading, and the fuel prices have been pretty stable, if not gone down. Now, I don't know if Aurora's charging more, that could be, but I just want to, I'm okay with moving forward with adding things. I just want to be transparent if that's what's driving that cost.
Well, I think that's part of it. I can't say that's the only mechanism. I think it is, when you look at filling non-league scheduled games, who can we play? Where are they located? How do we get there? How far do we have to travel? Are they our same size? Are they larger than us? Will they play against us? Are they competitive in nature with us? I think all those things really factor in. The size of our teams, which is awesome.
And
In a
just
lot
to
of
add
cases.
to that too, I mean,
Sorry.
you look at field hockey, and that's a great point. East Juniata dropped out last minute, so we had to go find two different teams that were significantly further away. So it is starting to happen. Softball, St. Joe's, I know they're far away anyway, but they were going to come to us, and now we got to go to Central Cambria, and we need because schedules do change. So I think that Dr. Fox brings a great point there. I think that's a contributor as well.
But I guess we could go back and look at last year, how much we budgeted and how close we were to spending that budgeted amount or over. Like if we spent, 32,000 last year, we budgeted 28,000, then I'm assuming we're looking at those numbers, correct? Correct.
When Mr. Browse had said that, in his grand plan of beautiful things that he wants to do, he wants to be able to build a budget that shows what did we actually spend, not what did we just budget, because then the numbers don't look like they're increasing that much, right? If you go to an actual versus budgeted amount, the better number for us to compare would be actual spent, not budgeted, correct? That's what Jason's grand plan is. He's getting that. And then I think I had one other thing was I had just had a question about was the fencing is in two different locations, one for repair and one for replace, same number. I was just wondering if that was a duplicate and where is that? Where are we putting that?
Yeah, so I can answer the first one. It was a duplicate. I already
Oh.
took it out of my master file, but yep, so there's
I found something.
$7,500 that'll come out. And then Scott, if you want to talk to where it's at.
Yeah, so the fence, where we're having a practice field, right on the other side of baseball, we're going to use that as a practice field for soccer for the spring, and also when junior high starts for football, we're going to have another. But for soccer, we have to put fences behind the goals because you got 11 and 50, you got,
Right.
busy roads both sides, could be hazardous. So we said we're not going to get a fence to go all the way around the field, but just to protect those areas behind the goals.
So if I'm accurate in saying, I think fencing, we kind of mean poles with mesh. And that way we could take it down in the winter and it's used to collect the ball so they're not running onto schoolhouse.
Correct.
And so this will be on that area that we filled after we put in the turf field, and we created that sort of flat spot there, is that it?
That's
Oh,
correct.
good.
The soil that was used from the stadium, it got moved over to that field. Huge cost-saving mechanism for the district during that project. They also graded it. The team has been doing a great job of doing the best they can of rolling that. Animals love that area, so they've been doing a good job of rolling that and making that into a field.
Can I, and at the risk of you guys throwing papers at me, I did have another question about the coaches thing. What was the decision for removing sideline coaches and then having them under competition? Like, did we remove the two sideline coaches and now only have two competition coaches, or?
No, I just kind of combined it all into cheerleading rather than try to split it out and try to understand the matrix and stuff like that, because competition's a little bit, wasn't really in the matrix real well, so it was just kind of listed as cheerleading, so I just treated cheerleading like all the rest of them and combined. The other ones have junior high and high school combined, so I just kind of put cheerleading all into one bucket and ran it through the matrix.
But so that number actually came down then, based
I
on how it
mean-
was budgeted before?
Yes.
Okay, okay. And the same thing, is that the same thing that happened with cross-country? It's just, you still have 3 coaches there, you just ran it through the matrix and it's lower? Okay. All right, I think that's it on that.
And we'll continue down here through line number 96 through 123.
Is this the only place in the budget that we have septic services listed?
Yes.
Okay, because I could remember if I had seen it in this section before when I looked, or it was also in another section. But when I did, I figured out how to do a search on this stuff, and I couldn't find it anywhere else. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't listed somewhere else. So this is the only place that we list
Yeah.
where we lease those?
Correct.
Okay,
We'll have payment to sewer, which is different. That's our sewer bill to the Penn Township Municipal Authority in the business office budget. These are for the rentals of the outdoor movable porta potties. And we'll go ahead and move 135 to 164.
so let me back in, just back. So what is disposal services under the business office?
That's our garbage. That would be
Okay.
like our dumpsters.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. And then sewer is a separate one. All right, sounds good, thanks.
And as we scroll to the end here, you'll see that the overall athletics budget projected from 24-25 school year to 26-27 is a reduction of 5.6%.
What is yearly team uniform? Which
0.6%.
sport is that?
That's right.
Middle school, boys and girls soccer, they're getting new uniforms. Their cycle's up. So.
Yeah, and I think some of that reflection of the reduction is because I think we doubled up on one of our replacement last year for uniforms. That caused us to go higher than.
We moved
normal.
ahead girls and boys varsity soccer due to incomplete uniforms.
So we get to save a little bit this year.
I'm currently soaking a white shirt because it's orange.
And I just want to say thank you to both Scott and to Jason for entertaining my questions on the salaries. As you all know, I'm a big sports mom and I'm a big athletics fan, and I want our coaches, including Jason, to be paid what they're duly deserved. I just want to make sure I just want transparency in the numbers, and that way if somebody asks me about that, I'm able to say, why did that look like it went up? And now I can say, it's because it wasn't reflected, there was no big increase. I just wanted to be able to have that answer, so thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. These are great questions, and we want to provide as much detail as we can and as much accurate information as we can to continue to prepare.
I'm just thinking, after you've been here for a year, you'll have, some of this stuff I still struggle with, because it's like, okay, $1,000 for every activity sports. Like, so cheerleading has the same amount of money as, football, not football, but you know what I mean. They all have the exact same amount for supplies. And I can't imagine your cheerleading supplies is the same as, whatever, I can't remember, basketball. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking, as you're keeping track of some of that, you'll be able to have a little more realistic numbers.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And, you know, again, you factor in numbers too per program. You know, you start to get an idea of how many people come out to each program. You know, look at track right now. We have 97 athletes right now on the track team, which is a lot. It's incredible. But, you know, again, I think you're right. With a year under my belt to be able to see what we need to do to make our program successful, I think a set number for each program isn't realistic. I think you have to really see who's out, how many people are out there, how many levels do you have, what's the sport, you know, because you look at football equipment is very expensive. You look at some other equipment we can get, you know, I was a basketball coach for years. You can get basketball equipment pretty cheap, you know, besides the basketball itself, everything else around there you get pretty cheap. So I think we need to be more sports specific, 100%.
But I will say I'm going to take off my suit now and put my coaching hat on and basically say, yeah, no one's ever come to me and said, hey, you have $1,000 to spend, and I'm going to go spend it. So basically what I do is, hey, this is what I need. And some years I need $200 worth of stuff. I never use my 1,000. The next year I might need $2,000 worth of stuff. And I think all coaches kind of do that. And the athletic directors over the years always just said, well, yeah, we got a little bit, you can get that, or no, hey, let's push that to next year because other sports have, you know, went and took it. I've never been told no in anything realistic. Yes.
That's exactly what it feels like.
So-
Hey, this amount of money for the sport. When the reality of it is, it all goes into a pot. We
Correct.
may do 3 times that amount for that sport and almost nothing for another sport. But to report it and be budgeting like this seems disingenuous, at least to me, and it never made sense. So I'm hoping we can not lessen the amount of money, maybe add more money, but just do it in a more, you know,
Well,
do
and
it that accurately reflects actually what we're doing. And if we want to put it all together and just say it's all sports, you know, whatever, and you want to do it that way, that makes a lot more sense than saying we're spending $1,000 on cheerleading equipment when we aren't.
I totally agree with that. If we could put it all into one pot, I think.
But I think,
That's basically what we've done before, I believe, just said we weren't.
that being said, I do think I like the idea, though, of finding out if we are spending X number of dollars in supplies for football and X number of dollars for field hockey, then we have a better idea of where we need to raise, because one is more demanding cost-wise than the other. If it's all in one big lump sum and it's, you know, $40,000 for supplies and we use 38, we don't have a sense of where is the bigger need is. You know what I mean? Like, without micromanaging it,
It's just like
you know.
the question that was asked about the salaries and Peasers. It could be put in this way, but he could keep track separately, and we could take a look at it
Fair.
separately. You could keep track of all that, and the board could get that, we would get an idea where it is, instead of having to be too accurate in the aiming, but also not just making up some number.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm excited
Well, I
of all
think
the new
too, I
people
think-
we have, because, you know, we're tuning things again and where they need to be.
Right, and Jason brought up one thing I'll say. Jason brought up a great point because, yeah, he could spend $200 one year, and then the next year he needs $800.
Right.
The next year he needs $100. It changes, and that's just not Jason. That's every program. So, you know, I think being more clear, but having it in a pot, but still tracking what sports are spending amount of money, you know, and then we can report that to the board and say, all right, you know, the most expensive sport this year was this one, and we kind of can communicate that.
And even not only, even from an accountability standpoint, and for you as the athletic director, Craig knows as the high school principal, in probably November, December, the teachers have to get together and send him, this is the equipment I need for next year, and then he knows as the principal what, and I assume your coaches probably aren't asked to do that, but if they could say, I think I'm gonna need this next year, so you have a general idea, as opposed to just balancing, you know, the same amount and saying, come to me, and if I have the money, I'll get it for you. You know, it's.
Before we go on to revenue, any final questions on anything in terms of the projected expenses that you would like us to talk about or address before we go into how we're going to attempt to pay for these expenses? And again, when we get into revenue, revenue is a projection. That's really important. There's a lot of assumptions that are made in terms, projected assumptions made in terms of revenue.
Yeah. So I don't know if many of you saw this, but I have a changes tab all the way on the left, beside the budget summary. So since we went through all the expense tabs, anything that, we got, more accurate numbers for, or, just anything that might have changed based off of what we reviewed is on the changes tab. So you can see the pluses and minuses. I'll continue to put this file out there maybe weekly or every other week or something like that. So that way you can go in and see what has changed since we looked at the tabs over the last, whatever, month or so. And we'll continue to change as we get more updated and real numbers for some of these categories.
The EAP, the Employee Assistance Program?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
It's a simple formula, Jonathan, you can do it.
It's already done on my file.
Am I able to ask, well, are you getting into revenue yet, or was that coming up next?
That's next, yeah.
Okay, before you do that, Christine, can I ask you just two quick questions? I know we already went over technology. I think you're gonna be able to just answer these off the top of your head. Just sort of like again, more of like a public service announcement. Keola, why are we engaged, or what do we spend that money on?
Sure. Yeah, we actually use Keola for some of our Black Hawk Academy courses.
Okay.
Most of the high school courses that we provide to our Black Hawk Academy students are through Canvas, taught by our teachers. The content was created by our teachers. But there are some electives at the high school that we don't have in Canvas, so we need to provide some electives to our Black Hawk Academy students. And then any K through 8 student takes the Keola
Is that where
classes.
most of it is going to that for the K through 8?
Yeah,
And the only reason I ask is because I was wondering when we started, or have we, that cooperative agreement or whatever that we were looking at doing with East Penn, did that help to alleviate?
Unfortunately, it never really
Oh, okay.
garnered the traction
Okay.
between both of us. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it was a great idea, it could be revisited in future years, but I think both of us, at that point, other things came into play, and, certainly with them, we could revisit, but, yeah, it
And-
has not.
Okay, and then I just had, I noticed there were 2 listings on desktop media. Was that meant to be both there, or?
I know we had one for, I'll look back here, but one for the,
There was elementary school and middle school, but they were listed twice, I thought, it looked
let me
like.
look here, so I'm,
But they were in 2 different sort of sections or areas.
I'm going to take a stab at it while she's looking and be completely wrong, but I think the desktop computers is for replacement computer lab here. The other, I believe, is for our media centers and being able to have some desktops for printing.
So yeah, see in there,
Is that right?
186, it's,
right,
Desktop.
so 180, no. So 186
Don't get
was
excited.
through ESSERS, so we don't have ESSERS this year. So 186, 87, and 88 were just from last year. We did, then this year, we have the desktop at the high school in the tech ed room, and the business lab. We need to replace those, so that's what 189 is. And then 192, 193, and 194, like Dr. Fox said, are for the media centers at each of the buildings.
but how do they,
Elementary and middle school is, media center is for the librarian checking in, checking out of books, and library aid. And then the high school, the same library, and then a couple desktops in the media center for students to use.
but how do they differ from the ones that were purchased last year, where that says media? Were they for,
So the ones at the high school are specific for the media class
Okay.
in the studio, same as the middle school. And then the elementary were computers in the media center for, well, not right, it wasn't media. We were thinking of putting them in the library, but they were not placed in the library. There's one or two. They're in Mrs. Brewer's room.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah, computer class. Just kidding, that's not true. All right, Mr. Brous, would you take us away on some revenue, please?
Nice.
It's your birthday.
It's my birthday. Happy birthday, me. All right. Good. It's really good. Oh, I didn't turn my mic off. Okay, so first of all, I mean, this is the hot topic. When I was at Casbo this month, I go meet with the other business managers at the other schools, and they were all like, "How are you guys budgeting for your state and federal funding this year? Like, are we supposed to take it all out and put nothing, or are you?" Because it's a wild card. You don't know what's going to happen. So in a lot of these cases, we just held stuff flat to where we are either this year actuals or what we had in the budget for last year. So we'll start here at the top. The top section's all your local funding. So the first line is the current real estate tax. This assumes the 5.5%. As you can see, it only garners $370,000, and it only shows a 3.2% increase, and that's due to the balancing of the two counties and the impact of that.
Will
Yep.
that increase beyond the 2026 taxes? So like we already got tax bills for right now. That would be for next year's taxes?
Correct.
Okay, I'll have another question on that then, so carry on.
Okay.
Well, I guess maybe I could ask it now. So all of us that live in the district got our real estate tax assessments. So this number, I would assume, is not reflecting the millage increase multiplied by those new assessment values.
The new assessment values won't go into effect until 26, 27.
So they're not going to be on the 2026 taxes for
No.
next year.
Nope.
That is what we were told,
So,
because there's a time frame to go through appeals.
right, yeah, I guess. Okay. I guess I was wondering. Next year is 2020. But I understand
Correct.
the appeal process. So it's not really going in effect till 2027.
Correct.
Okay. So, okay.
All right, line number 11 is the next, I guess you would say, increase. If you remember, you probably don't remember, but back when we were talking about, in one of the expenses, it was increased by $75,000. I said it would be offset in the revenue, so that's what the $75,000 offset is, so that offsets an expense in another category. In the past, we were just netting the expense and revenue together, and I'm splitting it out and actually showing the full revenue here and then the full expense back where it should be. Interest, we anticipate interest rates to, continue to slowly drop, so we won't get quite the interest that we have this year, so I have it reduced by $50,000. Again, that's obviously just a guess based on trending. Idea B, 21,000, is that do you remember what that was? Is that a number that we got from somewhere to show that increase? I don't remember off the top of my head.
That was, my understanding would be the number that we received.
From the IU.
That's correct. It's passed through from the IU, from the federal government. That's our Individuals with Disabilities Education Act funds that come through that are earmarked specifically, part of our IDEA plan that we submit to the IU. And that number could vary, but certainly what we try to do is use the current year number as the number of the benchmark. But again, that could go up or down based upon funds that are available and pass through.
All right, line 20 and 21, that's just an offset. Last year it was budgeted in that particular code, and I put it in 6990, which is miscellaneous revenue, so it's just a switch between codes. So looking at just the local, we're showing a $429,000 increase, and $370 of that is the estimated tax increase based on Act 1. Going down in,
Did you,
So the question was, revenue from LEA activities, 6710.
Grant writing, something, we're expecting $20,000 more?
revenue from LA activities. I think I looked at the current trends there and saw that it was actually increasing a little bit, so I bumped it up. So I think the budget was a little low last year, so.
So I think he's also asking, what is some of the LEA activities? Could be as simple as a
Oh, is that-
rental, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where I think our gates and stuff
Yep.
for the sporting events and stuff like that come in.
Rentals.
And, we have some ideas next year about, not how to get more revenue, but how to, change our
Structure.
pay or charge structure for that as well, so.
and what about, what, did you mention 6944? Why that's out?
It's just a classification. So if you see the line right below it, 6990, last year it
Oh,
was
okay.
classified in 6944, when in reality, the expenses are going to 6990. So I just moved it down a line
Okay.
to where the actuals are actually being posted to. So getting into the state side of things, the grand total is going up 679,000. So basic ed subsidy is expected to increase a little bit there, 1.5%. Special ed funding increasing as well. The transportation's actually going down. The budget was in there last year. It is not what's actually coming in this year. So the 2010 is what we're actually going to receive this year. So we will be short in that one category for revenue this year. The only other one is that increase is the Ready to Learn block grant. I don't know, Dr. Fox, if you have more on that one.
Sure, I can speak to that a little bit. Based on just some formulas that came out late last year from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the budget increased through the Ready to Learn block grant, and we used that for staffing, and we use that for classroom reduction and full-day kindergarten. So that number came out to be a higher number than what was projected. We are and have been told early on in the process that that number can remain in there as consistent. And again, that was early, and again, there's still a lot of uncertainties that play out. So we're going to keep it in until we get other data that shows that we need to make any alterations to that. But that was a really nice addition from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
So Jason, when you said the basic ed, you have it increasing a little bit, but we're not keeping it flat?
Well,
Are
the
you-
basic ed subsidy from the 20, that we were, again, when the Commonwealth's budget came out and was finalized
Oh,
with that Ready to Learn block grant, it also increased a little bit on the basic ed
Okay,
subsidy.
that's the part we're keeping
So then we
flat.
added that
Okay,
flat, yeah.
okay.
So a lot of assumptions that it's going to continue. That's again, one of the problems as we sit here. We're making a lot of predictions because we rely a lot on state and federal. Of course, that's about, what, 70%, maybe 60% of our budget, and we're relying on assumptions, which it would be nice if it was the opposite way, right? We would know what those real-time numbers are from the federal and state, and then we can look at what we need to do. Unfortunately, it's not driven that way.
And the same thing, kind of, we're guessing on basing the real estate taxes based on what you've brought in from last year, but with the new home builds and things like that, that number could be
Yeah, we
higher.
collect those numbers, and we get those numbers of the values from both Perry and Dolphin, as we have to put both of those in, and that's what causes that equalization. Good question, and that's based, and we have to have a finality to that number.
All right, the last piece is the federal piece, which obviously is, dropping quite a bit, mostly due to obviously the ESSER's running out this year, so we will not have that next year. But the Title I, Title II, and Title IV are projected to go up a little bit to help offset some of that. So if you look at the top, the grand total is 37.6. Last year's budget was 37.3, so about a $378,000 increase is where it sits right now as a projection.
Looking at line number 8810, I'd like to commend Mrs. Bressy and Mrs. Van Wy and Mr. Rao and the entire special education office. Dr. Reese, Mrs. Neville, for all of their work, our contracted OT, speech and language, because billing medical access is important because it's a revenue piece that comes back. And it's not just about the revenue, but it goes back to being able to support the needs and the finances for that student. And it also opens up several different programs, but it's complicated. There's a lot of pieces associated with it. It's a lot of training, and Mrs. Van Wy has done a tremendous job of learning and growing with all of that training. So we'll continue and we'll work through that, and we'll continue to do what we can to be able to reclaim some of those funds that are available to us and use to put back for the needs of our students. All right, it is 7:30. Are there any final questions on anything? And then I would like some next steps or direction from you. I think the first question, while you see if there's any additional questions, is at this point, do you feel that there's any need for any additional budget, special budget meetings that are short of caucus and board? And if not, since this is a formal meeting, we could do a motion to cancel the additional meetings, and then we would need a motion and a second, and then what we can do is we could advertise that those are canceled, if you so want to. We actually had two scheduled. They were scheduled for March the 20th.
April sometime.
And April 10th.
It seems to me any future discussion, which there should be or will be, could be held at a caucus meeting without taking up an exorbitant amount of time. So I think it would be fine. Is this a voting meeting tonight? Like,
It is.
So could I ask for someone to make a motion for us to cancel the March 20th budget workshop meeting and the April 10th budget workshop meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions, concerns about that? Okay, then, that motion carries. One thing concerning budget, I was looking at on my phone, an article that we received recently from a current audit, I believe, of cyber schools, in which it highlights specifically, they've done some right-to-know requests, which were so redacted that it was ridiculous to understand them, I think. But it has highlighted even more so and a little more specifically some of the costs that the cyber schools are using to pay for things and using our money. So I think at some point, whenever we are going to make sure we have a big enough audience, I don't know which meeting, but at some meeting, I think we should read portion of that or give some more specifics to that. I think it was like, maybe 32 million that they spent on lobbying and advertising, and that's your money. That's my money. Now, we can't lobby and advertise, nor do we need to, but they are using money, our money, my money, taxpayer money, to pay for things that we as a public school are not allowed to pay for. And it's coming to light more, and it continues to come to light more. And hopefully, our legislators will pass some legislation that will reduce some of the financial onus on us, because we're spending, I want to say, what, 3.5 million roughly in our budget to pay for this stuff. And I think at some point, like I said, when we know we have a better audience, I feel it is important to highlight that, because it's ridiculous.
Thank you. Any further questions from anybody? Any public comment? Oops, I'm sorry. That's
No, go. Well, our meeting schedule is there. As you can see, we just canceled 2 meetings. Anyone have anything for the good of the order before we adjourn? Okay, then our next meeting is, I want to say, what, the April 1st caucus meeting, which is also the April 1st town hall meeting, which 12 of students will come out prior to that caucus meeting and share with us. So, can I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.